As mentioned, this content today is presented in conjunction with Payoneer. So a little bit of background about what Payoneer are and do. So Payoneer's platform streamlines global commerce for millions of businesses from 200 countries globally, delivering a suite of services that includes cross-border payments, working capital, tax solutions and risk management to enterprise businesses, sellers, freelancers, and most importantly, affiliates worldwide. So Payoneer have been kind enough to lend us one of their brand ambassadors today. And so we're going to be speaking with Joachim Sebastian, who's going to be sharing some of his incredible expertise and who has kindly put together this content and will walk us through it. So Joe is a Malaysian-born and based award-winning entrepreneur and coach on managing and growing e-commerce-based businesses, both directly and via the marketplaces. He's actually won the eBay Seller Award in 2016 and has been appointed as the brand ambassador in Malaysia for Payoneer, which is all awesome accolades. So Joe's going to talk about how to leverage marketplaces as a business to grow sales and what the pros and cons of doing that are. This is particularly relevant to Asia Pacific, where marketplaces we know are quite dominant for e-commerce. And so without further delay, I will pass you on to Joe and turn my video off.
All right. Thank you, Sophie. Appreciate the opportunity to, again, share our story, share our knowledge, and again, grow the ecosystem together with a Commission Factory and Payoneer, right? So I'm going to go through these items on my agenda. We'll talk about, number one, the background about what I do and why you should even listen to me, right? You always want to validate the source of information that you get. Then we'll talk about the differences between Amazon and eBay. As you know, in Southeast Asia, Amazon's also penetrating new marketplaces. They've just launched Australia a couple of months back, and recently Singapore as well, with I think that was last month, right? And after that, we'll go into the differences between running a marketplace-based strategy for e-commerce growth versus a website-based strategy. And then we'll dive into key aspects of the thought process behind how you grow an e-commerce business. And finally, we'll summarize the entire session, and I'll take some questions, and hopefully we have a lively session where we can kind of get into the details of how you want to grow an e-commerce business regionally over here, right? Okay, let's go. First slide, let's move to what we do, right? So I am the managing director, one of the 3 founders of Everpeak Consulting. We are a e-commerce based enabler in Malaysia, and what we do is that we grow brands and manufacturers within Malaysia and Southeast Asia to the whole world. We are a 3-year-old company, and our main core products are these 3, which we talk about: consult, manage, and fulfill. Consult essentially is a market study. We provide consultation and our experience across 6 years of running an e-commerce business to companies that want to ask questions like, hey, should I sell on e-commerce? Is my product going to work? Which platforms will it work on? Which country should I go to first? So Consult is a market study. Our main core product is called Manage, where we actually run all aspects of an e-commerce business on behalf of brand owners. So they essentially just need to manufacture and fulfill their product, and we will run their e-commerce operations from customer support to operational management, to advertising, to content strategy, to content uploading, to listing management, and even platform optimization. So we cover everything through the managed services. And finally, fulfill is where we store products for our clients and we ship for them throughout the whole world. So we're an end-to-end e-commerce enabler for the export market. We're focused on platforms such as Shopify, Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. These are the 4 platforms that we have our core competencies on. Okay, next slide. So why are we different from every other e-commerce consultancy in Southeast Asia or even in Asia itself, right? So first, we are the only Amazon Service Partner Network member in ASEAN. So if you go to Amazon.com and you search for Service Partner Network member, you'll be able to find Everpeaks there. We're the only Malaysian company as an eBay channel partner right now. And of course, I'm the brand ambassador for Payoneer for the past 5 years, growing the community, sharing knowledge, engaging with e-commerce sellers, affiliates, service providers and even those in the gig economy that utilize Payoneer within Malaysia. So I've been taking care of them for 5 years. And this is our background, where we come from, and I hope that this gives credibility to what we're going to share. And let's dive in straight away. Okay, so the first portion of the presentation is going to cover the difference between Amazon and eBay. Now, as you know, Amazon and eBay are two of the largest platforms in the whole world when it comes to e-commerce, right? When you talk about the export platforms, they mean that you export, you sell your products from whichever country that you're in to a different country. And Amazon itself, if you consider the US market, contains about 50% of the entire orders on e-commerce for any platform, actually. So they're a massive platform, and eBay is the incumbent as well. So these two platforms combined give you a very holistic representation on the export marketplaces. Now, in this slide, what I want to bring your attention to is we'll compare Amazon and eBay for the picture on the left and the picture on the right. So you see point number 1 over on the left, we'll compare it to point number 1 on the right, and so on. So I want to give you the differences between Amazon and eBay as a functional platform for you as a seller or a potential seller on these platforms, right? So first, let's talk about the way these products, or the way your products are listed on these platforms. One of the core fundamental differences between Amazon and eBay is the mechanism of listing. So first, Amazon is a catalog-based listing, a catalog-based site versus eBay, which is a listing-based site. Now, what does that mean, right? So the first thing is that Amazon owns the catalog. Amazon has a list of products that you tell Amazon, hey, I'm selling item 1, item 2, item 3. Versus eBay, where every seller creates a separate listing. So now, what is the result of this in terms of user experience? So let's take a pretty famous product. Let's say a Samsung Galaxy S2, right? That's a mobile phone. It's a pretty famous mobile phone. So on Amazon, if you search for Samsung Galaxy S2, you probably see 5 different listings. And when you click those listings, each of those listings will have approximately 1,000 to 2,000 sellers within the listing. So that is what it means by catalog. So each entry to the platform is sold by multiple sellers per listing. Versus eBay, it is a listing-based platform where every seller creates his own listing. Now, the effect of this is that when you search for Samsung Galaxy S2 on eBay, you're going to see about 1,000 different listings. So your strategy when you consider which marketplace to actually penetrate will really be affected by this, especially if you're a new seller. So when you're a new seller on eBay, you tend to get drowned within the mass of listings that are available there. Where in Amazon, you still get a fighting chance on having people view your product, especially if it's a pretty famous product and has high demand in the market. Okay, so that's the first difference. Excuse me. Now, the second difference is about the standards and the policies on the platform. So this is item number 2 on the picture, where you see Amazon has a very, very high and strict set of guidelines and policies that they require sellers to adhere to. Now, if you don't know e-commerce, or if you've never started e-commerce, Amazon's a very, very apprehensive platform to actually begin on, because it shows a complicated infrastructure, complicated interface, a lot of buttons, a lot of tools, a lot of widgets there. Versus eBay. eBay, I wouldn't say lower standards in terms of deterioration, but it has a lower barrier to entry and a more seller-friendly interface as well. So it doesn't overwhelm you at the start. So the key takeaway from this is that, number 1, if you should choose a platform to start exporting on, eBay is the better platform, because it gives you an opportunity to immerse yourself into the nuances of e-commerce without truly overwhelming you immediately. And Amazon tends to do that for new sellers. So even in Malaysia, you're going to see about probably 50 to 100 eBay sellers for every single Amazon seller that's available. So that gives you an idea of the difficulty it is to actually start selling on these platforms. Okay, the next one is about the customer value. That's point number 3. If you talk about Amazon, we generally see a higher value per cart conversion on Amazon, where the buyers are already very familiar with the platform. They trust the platform and they tend to spend more on the platform versus eBay, where you're going to see quite a number of bargain hunters, people that are looking for optional deals, and even people that are looking for second-hand items, right? So that's a key differentiator within Amazon and eBay. Second-hand items on Amazon, not so many. On eBay, you'll see a lot of people selling second-hand items on auction or fixed price, right? And sometimes you even are able to see people who are buying off eBay and selling on Amazon. So they arbitrate, the retail arbitration there. So there is a difference, a significant difference in cart value between these two platforms. And sometimes if you find the right niche, you're able to capitalize on that as well. So again, to just reiterate, the buyer spend value in Amazon is higher than eBay, okay? Next, the high trust factor. When you talk about Amazon, they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars every year just to promote the platform, as well as to build in super buyer-centric policies. Now, when I say super buyer-centric policies, it means that if you want to succeed on Amazon and you do something that's different, ask yourself this question: does the buyer benefit from this? If you can answer that question with a yes, most likely you're pretty safe. So anything that supports the buyer journey, anything that supports a better buyer experience is something that Amazon wants to promote, because they have built this platform to be so branded, so trusted by buyers across the world that, they don't really care who the sellers are, in fact. That's why you see so many third-party sellers making massive sales on Amazon if they can comply within the rules and regulations across a set spread of time, right? And versus eBay, you got to be a bit more careful on this platform because there are loopholes within the ecosystem that can expose you to fraud, where there have been instances where buyers purchase a product, they know that you are an export seller, so you're not located within the country you're selling to, and they purchase a mobile phone. So when they get the mobile phone, they replace the mobile phone with a heavy object, a stone, so the weight is still the same, and they return it. So when eBay detects the return is initiated, they will automate the process. And when you receive the item, because you're an export seller, the chances are you don't really inspect the goods before you refund, and you consolidate your goods in an overseas warehouse before bringing them back on probably a monthly or bi-monthly basis. And then it's too late, because you'll suddenly see that the buyer returned an item that's not really yours, number one. Number two, it is of zero value. And number three, you're going to have issues trying to reclaim that money back. Having said that, there are generally a number of ways that you can overcome this by keeping your operations consistent, having documentation for each shipment, and also, of course, bringing up the case with eBay and PayPal whenever these issues happen, because they do have seller protection. It is just comparatively not as stringent or as really effective as Amazon. Amazon is a no compromise platform where sellers, if you abuse your system, you're going to get suspended and banned very, very quickly. Okay, now another difference on the platform is the 24-hour SLA. This is point number 5. In Amazon, because they emphasize customer experience, whenever someone creates a query on Amazon, you've got to reply within 24 hours. If you don't, it is considered a defect, and too many defects, you're going to get suspended again. So when you run your business on Amazon, you truly need to be quite what's the right word? You need to be actively monitoring each metric that is available on the platform versus what you do in a normal retail business where it operates on a structured and a routine basis, right? So that's Amazon. Versus eBay. eBay has a complicated returns process that may or may not be suitable for export sellers, where eBay requires you to provide a returns label to the buyer who's purchased the product. Now, all export platforms need you to provide a local returns address. So if you sell to Amazon Spain, you need to provide a Spanish address. If you sell to Amazon UK, you need to provide a UK address. If you sell to eBay US, you need to provide an eBay US address. And this is something that a lot of sellers don't plan beforehand. And when they make the sale, sometimes 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100 become returns, and you need to be able to deal with this, right? And finally, the last point here is about the gated mechanism within the Amazon platform. So a lot of times, especially when you talk to consultants in the market, you need to be really careful about what they promise you, because Amazon as a platform, remember, its focus is to provide an excellent customer experience. So when you're a new seller on the platform, Amazon's job is to validate, hey, are you a proper seller? Are you a seller that supports the buyer experience that Amazon mandates for all its buyers? Are you a seller that doesn't fraudulently represent the products that you sell? Are you a seller that sells original products? So these are things that Amazon actually wants to determine across time. So when you start selling on Amazon, essentially you're restricted in your reach. So when a new seller begins his account, you'll generally see your listing views and impressions at quite a bit lower rate than what you expect for the first 6 months. So when you achieve a certain amount of sales, Amazon then requests for you to submit additional documents or submit more validation while they whitelist your account as per each transaction that you successfully conclude. So they look at it this way. If you're a seller, you start selling on Amazon, I'm going to let you sell 100 units first. And out of the 100 units, I'm going to see what my customers actually say about your sales track record and how you've been doing your business. And if they say the right things, and from our system, we check that it is something that is in line with the Amazon brand strategy, that I'm going to support you in your growth. So they're going to open the gates. They're going to let you get more views per listing. They're going to push your listings through certain channels that increase the viewership. And hopefully your mechanism of execution is consistent in that way. So each time you pass a gateway, each time they evaluate you, they're going to increase the number of views that you get. So this is why new sellers struggle for the first 6 months. When we consult with our clients, we give them a year before you actually break even on these platforms, because you have to invest in marketing, to invest in growth, and these things take time. Versus eBay, eBay is a gamified account growth mechanism where you need to comply with eBay's requirements to be a top-rated seller, right? So there are 3 seller levels there: top-rated, above standard, and below standard. If you're below standard, you're in trouble. So that's generally 15 to 20% of the total population of sellers. You got about 60 to 70% of the population selling at above standard, which is the norm. It's a very large population, and about 5 to 10%, maybe 15% in top rated. Now, top rated sellers require you to ship in 1 day, provide 30-day returns, to provide a holistic buyer experience where you don't have defects above a certain amount, you ship within time, and a lot more factors such as this. So why I mention this as a gamified account, it's like playing an RPG or a video game. If you play a certain character, you fight monsters and you level up and you grow your character in strength and whatever not. It's the same way you grow your account on eBay, by creating more sales, by keeping the sales at a consistent and effective execution manner, where you ship your products in the right time, you ship it in the right way, your buyer receives the products within the SLA, the agreed service level that you've committed to eBay, and you provide returns for them so that the experience is holistic, right? So that's the difference between these 2 platforms so far. I'm not going to dive too deep into it because, again, this is an introduction to both the platforms. Let's go to the next slide, right?
Actually, Joe, just quickly, what would you say, which platform is more suited to the Malaysian consumer, would you say, given the differences you just outlined?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Which consumer?
Which platform is more suited to the Malaysian consumer, given the differences you just outlined?
So the Malaysian consumer generally may not transact on Amazon and eBay because, again, it's an export platform, right? But if you choose a Malaysian seller per se, I would say start on eBay first, because that gives you the awareness and a lesser intense growth journey. So eBay is a much more tolerant platform, and if you start on eBay, you get the basics right, then you can push to Amazon after that.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Great. Okay, let's go. So now we've learned about the two different marketplaces. Let me share with you some strategies, or not strategies, a thought process behind differentiating a marketplace-based platform versus a website platform for sales, right? So the first thing to talk about is traffic. The main difference between a marketplace and a website is generation of traffic, where eBay and Amazon spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying traffic from Google, Facebook, and whatever channels that they can actually approach. Versus a website, if let's say you start a joachimsebastian.com and you sell some stuff over there, you've got to pay Facebook and Google for the traffic that you need on the website. And of course, to grow the organic reach via search engine optimization and ranking within Google or Alexa or Yahoo or whatever other search engine that you choose to participate in. So this is the first difference there, where marketplaces, when they pay for traffic, the traffic comes through the platform, and how they reward sellers with the traffic is basically how much you play the game, right? If you comply with all the hoops that Amazon and eBay ask you to jump through, they're going to give you more traffic. So if you comply with the requirements, you become a top-rated seller, you have very good performance metrics on Amazon, they're going to give you more traffic. So you don't directly pay for organic traffic on the marketplace, and that's a great benefit, right? So that's the first thing. For the website, yes, you control the traffic, you control the cost, but you've got to pay for it directly. And if you think about it, you're paying and you're competing with marketplaces for those keywords. That's why traffic is very expensive nowadays on Google and Facebook as well. Now, the next key point is data. When you run your own website, generally, if you comply with the GDPR and the privacy acts across the world, you own the data and you are able to remarket provided you get consent from your consumers. Versus a marketplace, you don't own the data. So whoever you sell to remains the marketplace customer. They're not your customer, they're the marketplace customer. And the marketplace generally does not like you to solicit customers away from them. So that's a policy violation on eBay and Amazon immediately. You can get your account suspended for that. Now, the next item here is about buyer behavior. Now, this is something which I want to really emphasize on. Why sell on marketplaces versus a website? Remember, when you sell on a website, you're advertising to Facebook and Google traffic, right? People on Google, people on Facebook, they're there doing their own thing. They could be researching a recipe to make cupcakes. They could be researching the next job prospects for their life, right? Versus marketplaces where Amazon and eBay exist. When somebody is on Amazon and eBay, they are ready to make a purchase. So you're probably going to get about a 50% to 100% increase in conversion rate from the traffic that you generate from the marketplace versus your own traffic on from Facebook or Google, because the buyers are already ready to purchase. That's a massive difference there. So imagine if you're browsing Facebook, you're looking at what your friends have done across a number of days, and suddenly an ad pops up. You'll be like, hey, I'm not in that frame of mind, I'm not going to buy. Versus if you're on Amazon, you're looking for something and you pop up and see something else, and an ad appears where, okay, instead of buying item X, I'm going to buy item Y. And that's a much easier conversion cycle for any buyer, right? So that's another key point. Now, the next item is risk. Now, risk to you as a seller. On the website, I quantify the risk as low because you're in control of a lot of things, right? You're in control of policies, you're in control of how you generate your traffic, you're in control of your buyer journey, and so many other things. Versus a marketplace where you're not really in control. And if you do not comply with the requirements, and these requirements change time and time again to be updated based on industry requirements, right? You run the risk of having your sales channel being suspended or terminated if you don't comply. And that's a very high risk. So imagine you've built a sales channel that does about 50 to 100,000 US dollars every month. And because you don't comply with some regulation, Amazon suspends your account or eBay suspends your account. You're going to have a big issue there, right? So that is something you need to consider when you decide what strategy to utilize, okay? And lastly, cost per sale, right? Now, the cost of sale is something that you really need to consider. Remember when I talked about the traffic that Amazon and eBay pay to generate traffic from Facebook or Google into the marketplace? This traffic they provide to you, but in return, they take up to probably, if you consider the payment gateway fee, between 12 to 17% of your sale. So just to take note that cost of sale on marketplace is high because they pay for the traffic versus cost of sale on the website, which is generally between 2 to 6%, depends on what you use. If you use Shopify, you have your PayPal fee at 3 to 4%, and then you have 2% or 1% Shopify fee, depends on which package you chose, right? So that's the difference between marketplace and website for me. Okay, Sophie, you have anything to add on this slide?
Yeah, I was going to say, so all this is great, but how do you, in your opinion, transition a customer from buying your brand on a marketplace to buying direct from the site? Because obviously people want to keep costs down and maybe have a bit more control when they get to a certain size.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So there is multiple strategies that we implement. One of them we call, it's a term that's generally pushed out in public without true understanding. We use an omni-channel e-commerce strategy for this. And when you derive a multiple point of conversion for your customer, it tends to allow the customer to buy the product at the best place. So in terms of strategy, you want to have a marketplace price that is probably 5% more than your website. So when consumers do their research, they actually choose the website to convert because it's cheaper. Or you have a warranty registration process on your website that forces the customer that purchases your product anywhere in the world to still give you the data. So these are mechanisms of how you want to transition marketplace traffic into website traffic, yeah?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Really interesting.
Okay, 1 minute. My plug was not on. I'm just going to switch on my laptop plug before it goes off. Okay, it's 1 minute.
It's a small interim, technical issues. Can't plan for these things.
All right, that's done. Great. There's light. More light here. Okay, so let's go on to the next key point, which is strategy. Now, when you consider strategy on e-commerce, there are a few key things that I want to share with you. These 5 things are the main bulk of them. So the first aspect is the concept of market testing, right? When you talk about growing your business on e-commerce marketplace or website, you need to understand that a structured data-centric approach is the best way to do things. And how we do market tests is when we implement different variations of products in different mechanisms. For instance, you have 3 different kinds of pictures and you list it up, or you have 3 different kinds of prices and you list it up as well. So you test which one converts more and you push traffic to these products. And from these processes, you're able to identify what is the best foot forward for any product that you have. And this can be done not just on product, it can be done on policies, it can be done on structure of your stores, it can be done on many different things. And of course, if you consider marketplace versus websites, it is much more easier done on a website because you have full control on the design. But in terms of marketplace, it is easier to do this on eBay, which allows you to list every product separately than Amazon, which is a catalog-based marketplace, right? The next key point is localization. So when you sell any product, especially if you're selling to export marketplaces such as Germany or France, localize your product. If you do not convert or translate the listings, they will not convert by sales, right? You're not going to get sales from Germans if your products are not titled in German or having your descriptions in German. And besides this, you want to also use terminology that is local. So instead of listing it as a handphone, which we know in Malaysia, you've got to use cell phone as your keyword. So that's very important. This is for the US market especially, right? The third point is about customization. In the new age of e-commerce, the ability to customize your product and provide a differentiation factor is key to being one of the brands that is different from the rest, because you must understand that there are millions and millions and millions of products being listed every day on these marketplaces. You've got to figure out how you're going to be different, how you're going to have added value, how you're going to have a better customer experience for those who choose to purchase your product. Point number 4 is something that I brought up earlier, omni-channel e-commerce. This is the truest sense of how you want to capitalize on an overarching e-commerce strategy nowadays, because you cannot afford to just be on one platform, right? And even if you are on one platform, you still have to use multiple ways of generating traffic. So an omni-channel e-commerce strategy would entail having an Amazon platform ready, an eBay platform ready, an Etsy platform ready, a Shopify website ready, and all these platforms have the same value proposition, but may sell at a slightly different price depending on what you decide. Like earlier, due to the costs of the marketplace, you tend to have an inflation in price on the marketplace versus your website. So that's something that you can do. Also, having retail opportunity available also helps if you are based in the country that you're selling to. For instance, if you're in US, you have a web store and you have a retail store, and you offer the customer a buyer journey of his or her choice. So they can actually choose where they want to convert anytime, and the sale still comes back to your organization. And lastly, it's called brand building. Now, brand building is going to be the key differentiator moving forward in all e-commerce journeys, right? The differentiation of being a brand and a non-brand on Amazon is so vast. The things that a brand can do, such as headline ads, such as having a store, having enhanced brand content on Amazon, is massive. And now eBay has also undergone a brand building journey where they support brands with more activities that they can do versus non-brands, right? So these are the 5 for strategy. I'm going to move into the next slide, which is about platform competency. So now you understood strategy on e-commerce, right? So let's come into a bit about how you do well on these platforms. Now, the first key point is understanding platform gamification, which is the hoops that the platform asks you to jump through in order to get traffic. So on eBay, become a top-rated seller. For Amazon, make sure your customer metrics and your performance metrics are optimized at all times and you're doing well. Point number 2 is about issue resolution. Now, you're going to talk about different issues that occur, whether it's payment issues, product issues, customer issues, content issues as well. You need to understand that these platforms expect you to behave in a professional and a competent way, where you are expected to bear the cost of some of these issues. And if you take an antagonistic approach, or you take things personally when a customer says, hey, this product sucks, or I didn't get what I thought I would get, or you didn't send me the right product. If you take an antagonistic approach to this, it's going to result in a very short-lived e-commerce experience, because that's a very quick way to get terminated on both marketplaces. Remember, issue resolution can be the differentiating factor between a successful e-commerce venture and a failure. Okay, third point, ideal positioning and keywords. The first point of reference for any product on e-commerce is the title. So make sure the title actually describes what you're selling. So sometimes we tend to keyword stuff, like put a lot of relevant keywords in, but we miss the main item that actually describes the product itself. So one way of determining whether you have this done correctly is removing all other words and you retain that one word. Does it make sense to describe the product that you're selling, right? So you remove everything else and keep that one keyword. And if that keyword still is able to describe the product that you're selling, then you're good. If it doesn't, and no keyword does that, then you got to relook at your titling. For example, Samsung Galaxy S2 green 12-inch handphone, right? You remove everything and you keep handphone there, or cell phone, it still describes the product. And that's an example for number 3. Number 4 is automation. When you run an e-commerce strategy that's omni-channel, you're going to have multiple platforms, multiple points of customer queries, multiple points of order management and things like that. So look into automation and integration of tech to make your business processes easier. It's not going to be doable manually. So once you start running 5, 6 concurrent platforms, you're going to need to automate them. Okay. And lastly, e-commerce operations. bear in mind, a lot of companies that we consult with tend to come to us and say, hey, I've got 3 staff who are handling e-commerce. And I ask them, what do they do? Oh, they do everything. One person does it for Amazon US, one person does it for eBay US, and one person does it for, Etsy. And that's actually a surefire way of failing to run your plan the right way, because e-commerce operations is 7 distinct jobs, right? You've got content generation, you've got performance management, you've got customer support, you've got monitoring, you've got advertising, you've got probably listings as well. So there's so many different jobs in e-commerce operations that you must understand and be good at. The better you are at this, the more better your performance will be. Okay? And the last slide for the key points that I'll be sharing. Logistics. Whenever you sell something, how well you sell it, whichever platform you sell it, if the customer doesn't receive his product, it's considered a failure, because no customer is going to tolerate the greatest experience without getting what he bought, right? That's basic. So number one, you need to have a reliable logistics partner to overcome the where's my stuff issue, right? Because half the queries that you get is going to be where's my stuff. Number two, be consistent in your delivery and logistics. If you have a service provider, stay with one which gives you consistent performance. So we work together very closely with DHL Express, and they have provided us consistent performance across 5 to 6 years, and we stay with them. So we know what to expect. Number three, you need to understand the return rate of your business, right? If you're in fashion, it's about 20 to 30%. If you're in electronics, it could be 10 to 15%. If you're in automotive, it's 5%. And what you really need to do is to build in this margin into your price, so that will enable you to bear the cost of returns. If you don't cater to this, you're going to structure your business in a very unsustainable way. Number four, utilize pickup services for logistics providers to come to your warehouse and pick up the products rather than you go to their location and drop off, because that saves you manpower, saves you time, and allows you to ramp up significantly. So if you hit 30 to 40 orders a day, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to ship it day in, day out to the logistics providers. And lastly, understand export tax and duties. So this is a very great issue that a lot of sellers find as a big barrier. So when you sell to the European markets, understand that VAT is a major issue. You need to understand how to be compliant to VAT regulations and duties. If you sell to countries like US, they have a very high de minimis, which allows you to ship products up to 800 USD into the country without duties. Australia used to be in that way, but it is no longer. So these are things that you need to understand. And finally, let me just summarize all the key points here. Firstly, omnichannel is the way of the future. So if you're building an e-commerce strategy across multiple marketplaces, explore how you structure it in an omnichannel mechanism, because the buyer will buy on a platform that they are comfortable with. So provide them as many as you can. Number two, time on site is one of the most important criteria for any e-commerce platform. So have patience. The real true survivors are those that stay selling after 5 to 6 to 7 years in a sustainable way. And lastly, platform competency is a key to success. So understand how each platform functions. Every platform has its nuances, especially eBay and Amazon. If you get good in performance, you are going to be able to outperform the general growth curve, right? And if you underperform, you're going to be bearing business costs and losses that should not be borne. Okay, so that's the summary of my presentation, and I'll pass it back to Sophie to see if you have any